911! Shots fired! 2 down! Help us!
It begins not with a scream, but with a silence. The kind of silence that is heavy, expectant, and profoundly wrong. In the 1800 block of D Street, Northeast, on a rain-soaked June night, a phone sits dormant on a kitchen counter. Its screen remains dark, and with each passing minute that it does not light up, a mother's world quietly, inexorably begins to fracture. Her name is Eleanor Vance, and on the evening of June 22nd, 2025, the meticulously ordered universe of a parent, a universe built on the bedrock of text message check-ins and shared location pins, simply vanished. Her daughter, Cortney Burley, was supposed to be home. The rain had started hours ago. She'd texted she was leaving a friend's, that she was grabbing a ride. She was 15 minutes away. That was the last anyone ever heard from Cortney. This is the emotional ground zero of our story. Not the crime scene, but the living room where a clock ticks too loudly and a mother's hand hovers over her phone. The first cold tendrils of dread coiling in her stomach. The unanswerable question had been planted. Where, on a short drive home through a familiar city, does a young woman simply disappear? To understand the void Cortney left, you must first understand the light she carried. The 1800 block of D Street wasn't just an address. It was a tapestry of generations, a neighborhood where front porch conversations wove the community together. And Cortney, at 24, was one of its brightest threads. She was a teaching assistant at the local elementary school, known for her boundless patience and a laugh that could disarm the most sullen child. She had dreams of her own classroom, of anchoring herself even deeper in the community that raised her. She was, by all accounts, the person you hoped your kids would grow up to be. Rooted, kind, and full of a future that was not just promised, but already being built. The investigation began in the gray, pre-dawn hours of June 23rd, led by veteran homicide detective Marcus Thorne, a man whose calm demeanor belied a mind that cataloged inconsistencies like an archivist. The Metropolitan Police Department initiated a missing persons case that immediately felt different. There was no sign of a struggle at her apartment. Her car was found parked neatly just a block from her home. Keys missing. A single grocery bag from a late-night run sitting untouched on the passenger seat. It was as if she had vanished into the thin, damp air between her car and her front door. The community rallied. Flyers with Cortney's smiling face went up on every lamppost, every store window. But beneath the public hope, Thorne and his team felt the first chill of something predatory. This was too clean, too precise. And into this void of clues stepped a man who seemed to want nothing more than to fill it. His name was Julian Croft. To the world, he was the helpful neighbor, the ambitious young professional. He worked in IT for a non-profit, lived 2 buildings down from Cortney, and was among the first to join the search parties. He was the one who brought coffee to the weary volunteers, who offered thoughtful, plausible theories to detectives. He was articulate, concerned, and present. He was the last person anyone would suspect, which is precisely what made him so dangerous. Julian Croft's persona was a masterwork of benign camouflage. He was the quiet loner who had learned to perform being social. He remembered names, asked after family members, and his apartment was meticulously normal. But Detective Thorne's mind, a machine built on patterns, began to note anomalies. Croft was too helpful. His timeline of the search efforts was a little too detailed. He inserted himself into conversations with investigators just enough to be noticed, but not enough to be a nuisance. He was, in the parlance of the investigation, a low-frequency anomaly, a blip on the radar, but Thorne couldn't look away. The methods of Julian Croft, as they would later be pieced together, were a chilling study in patient digital predation. He hadn't hunted Cortney in a traditional sense. He had simply been watching for months from the anonymity of his screen. He knew her routines because he followed her social media, where she posted about her jogs through the neighborhood, her favorite coffee shop, her late-night grocery runs. He knew the geometry of her life because he lived within it, a ghost in the machine of her everyday world. His method was trust, not earned, but assumed. The trust you have for a familiar face in your own neighborhood. The trust that lets your guard down. He didn't need to lure her. He only needed to wait for the right moment, when the rain would provide its cover and the late hour its solitude. The break in the case came not from a screaming witness, but from a whisper of data. A city traffic camera, half a mile from D Street, had captured a fleeting glimpse of a dark sedan turning onto a side street at 11:04 p.m. The timestamp placed it minutes after Cortney's last text. The car was unremarkable, common, but Thorne's team, cross-referencing DMV records with their list of interviewed individuals, found a match. The car was registered to Julian Croft. It was the thread, fine as a spider's silk, that they began to pull. The application for a search warrant for Croft's apartment and devices was a tense, quiet affair. The probable cause was thin, a theory built on a feeling and a grainy image, but a judge saw it, and the warrant was signed. What they found inside Julian Croft's digital world was his true self, laid bare. A hidden partition on his laptop contained a chillingly methodical log. He had created files on several women in the neighborhood, but Cortney's was the most extensive. Photos, screenshots of her social media, notes on her schedule. It was a blueprint. And then, the final damning piece. Location data from his own phone, which he had foolishly believed was untouchable, placed him not at home, as he had claimed, but in the exact area where Cortney's car was parked, at the precise time she would have been arriving there. His downfall was his own arrogance, his belief that his digital veil was impenetrable. He had outsmarted every social convention, but he had forgotten the digital fingerprint he left with every step. Julian Croft was arrested on a quiet Tuesday morning. There was no struggle. He simply looked at Detective Thorne, and in his eyes was not surprise, but a kind of cold, weary acknowledgement. The legal proceedings that followed were swift. Faced with the mountain of digital evidence, Croft's defense crumbled. He offered no confession, no explanations. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the community, for Eleanor Vance, it was a verdict. It was justice of a sort. The predator was caged, but a verdict is not the same as truth. It does not answer the haunting, fundamental question of why Cortney? Was it random? A target of opportunity selected from his files? Or was there something more personal, more deeply sinister? Julian Croft never spoke. He sits in his cell now, a sphinx guarding the secret of his own pathology. He offered no motive, no closure. The official record states that Cortney Burley was the victim of a predatory, opportunistic attack, but the silence he maintains screams of a deeper darkness, of secrets he may have taken with him Were there other targets, other near misses the community never knew about? The investigation is closed, the legal system satisfied, but for those who lived through it, the story of Cortney Burley is not a case file. It is a permanent scar, a reminder that the most profound dangers are not always the strangers in the shadows, but the familiar faces who have learned to wear the daylight as a disguise. The truth of what happened in those final, rain-drenched moments on D Street remains locked away, not in an evidence locker, but in the impenetrable silence of a man who chose to become a monster, leaving a world forever haunted by the echo of a single, unanswered question. If you found this story haunting, don't stop here. Watch our next case, where another hidden truth finally comes to light.